Welcome back to Low Energy Leads Live. Today we are continuing our selling digital products series. I've been talking on the podcast these last couple of weeks about how to sell low-cost digital products. So things like digital downloads, things like courses, ebooks. I think of these as things that are like less than $100. And for many of us, these are not our main offers, right? We're doing services, maybe we're doing memberships, and these things are a side. They're a little tool that we offer. And we're wondering, how do they fit in to all the things that we're selling? Where do we promote them? That's the topic for this week. Where do we promote our digital products? And so we have a special guest with us. Katie Allen is here. Katie is a stylist and she's got quite an offer stack. We're going to get into it with her today. For those of you who are joining, we just have a couple folks on now. I have a small crowd, and this is actually the whole thesis of my project, which is like, can you sell digital products with a small audience? As you join us, please let us know in the chat if you have digital products and what you're selling. Oh, you can't hear me. Katie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, Nitya can't hear me. But as long as you can hear me, I think we're live on the air. All right. Well, Katie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Lex. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I want to get into what you're offering and sort of like how your business works right now. You've got a lot going on. So I'm going to pull up your website so that folks can get a sense of what it is to be part of Katie Just Styled. So tell us a little bit about what you offer. Like, what's the main core of your business?
So the main core of my business is one-on-one styling services for female entrepreneurs who want to just they know like what their style is, but they want to get really clear on bringing it to life so they can show up more confident at their networking events and their business on social media, photo shoots, what have you.
Yeah.
That's the core. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. I'll go through the website. So we've got your personal style services.
Yes, so that's my personal style services. Then I was running a podcast like through Apple for 4 years, and I've transitioned that over into LinkedIn Lives and my Style Squad membership. So the Style Squad membership is an extension of the podcast, which is the community aspects behind the podcast where it's creative female entrepreneurs. A lot of these ladies are newer in business than like my core one-on-one styling services or audience. And there is a monthly membership. So that one is $49 a month. So a little different than the one-on-one pricing. And then I don't have this right now, but I think I'm going to bring it back after we've been talking, is prior to running and opening the Style Squad, I was selling digital lookbooks. Now those are behind the paywall inside the Style Squad, but I'm starting to see the shakeout on digital products and how there's a place for the one-on-one styling. There's a place for the community styling. And then there's a place for the digital like ebooks, the one-offs, like, hey, I just want a little taste of what you're about.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how the trend lookbooks came about. Like, what was the origin of that product?
Ooh, so I've always been obsessed with like the seasonal style trends. It's not from like trends, but from a sound point of she still can't hear.
Yeah, I'm not sure why not.
I know. I'm like, someone else tune in and tell us. While you look at that, dig around on that, I'll keep going. So the seasonal style trends for me were really around what's going on in the world, right? Like as a business owner and all that, it like the trends I started to see are dictated by what's going on socially, economically, financially, all of those different things. And what does it mean for this year? Like we see that a lot in colors, we see that a lot in fabrics and tones, like what's popular, what's not. So that becomes super fascinating. And so that and the Style Squad was born out of me taking my one-on-one clients and starting these quarterly calls. And I would just get everyone on the phone because let's be honest, I was lonely because I'm working from home by myself. And I was like, hey, let's get on the phone. And it was just like an added value that I started to do for them. And we would just go through like every time the season shifts, it's a great time to like check back in with yourself. Like, am I the same person? What clothes am I wearing? Do I still want to wear those clothes? How have I changed? What changed? What could I buy to just like still feel really fresh? Do I need a new black t-shirt because my one is washed up? Right?
Yeah. Relatable.
Right.
You were taking your one-on-one clients and putting them together in
yes.
Okay.
And then, so the Style Squad was born out of that, and the books were born out of that. So then I started selling the books first because I was creating them for the one-on-one clients. And I was like, hey, then maybe I can sell these. So because I had the podcast was the best place. Like, I started to notice that this was the place where I could talk about those, and then I would get the traction on those. And then I could get people, that's how I moved them down the funnel, essentially. It's like, hey, I've been listening to your podcast. I like the podcast, but I'm not really quite sure what this all means for me. And then I dropped the books, and I have a small audience, but I had a lot of success with that small audience. Like, at the time when I launched that book originally, say 2021, I'm not even joking, I probably had 200, if that, people on my email list. And that first round of books, I think I went back and looked the other day, I sold 23 of them.
That's pretty good.
As I said, that's pretty good. And I think that is definitely 100% from the podcasting, right? Because people are getting to know you. They're really dialed in on you. But then because I was doing it and pulling my one-on-one clients together, and that kind of became a thing, then that's where the membership was born. And right on the heels of that, then I just combined the two of them. And now I'm starting to see the difference. And you and I talked about this a little bit, like community versus one-on-one versus I just want your digital product, because there's something there around people that want community, but people that just want a digital product just want a digital product.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the workload. Like, when you're selling those originally, those lookbooks, like, how much work did you put into making them and promoting them? How much work did it take for you to sell that 23?
A lot, if I'm really honest. Like,
how many hours do you think?
It took me, I would say, maybe a whole day to create the book. So I would always do those on Mondays. So say like roughly 8 hours. And then I'd spend, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, probably a week, reaching out. So another one of the strategies that works really good for me, which I think with a lot of people with small audience, is like the personal reach out. And just being like, hey, guess what? I have this book. Do you want it? Do you know anyone that wants it? And then once I sold about, I think it was 3 seasons of it. Like, once you started that one, then the next season, I kind of just followed suit with like, hey, you got the book last time. Do you want the book again this time? So between emailing, personal reach outs, and then like the podcast episodes, let's be honest, I was recording those anyway, but those are taking anywhere from like, an hour a week by the time you record and do all the back end stuff. I would say personal reach outs and emailing, I probably spent anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, maybe a day. So I wouldn't, like, people talk about this, like, it's passive, but is it passive? The only thing that was really missing there is the actual one-on-one accountability, which is where, you spend some time in the back end. Like, people don't have access to me per se.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting. I think this is like the question of the small audience, big audience thing. It's just like, at what point does it flip to becoming, what people think of as a scalable price point, right? Where it's like, oh, at this point, like, I'm making more back than what I'm putting into it. Yes. And I think that's a challenging line to find.
It is.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, my husband is more of that. Like, he has a larger audience, and it's been so interesting to watch the two businesses and have those conversations, because we come at it from a completely different point of view every time, because we have to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I also think there's something to be said for like how you want to work. Like, if you like working face to face with people and you enjoy sort of problem solving for people, which is what you get to do when you're offering services, that's very different work from like creating, like YouTube videos or podcasting, which is like a lot of times you're doing that stuff solo, and it's just like a totally different way of working.
Yeah, good point.
Oh, I see. We have a question.
Ooh.
Without a general marketplace, where can we sell our offer? That's a great question. Well, so I don't know if you heard what Katie just said, but building your own audience would be one of the places that you can do that. And so, Katie, tell us, actually, to back up, where that email list came from. How did you build your email list?
To like attending events and like getting people to sign up there, and then just the podcast and just lead magnets. As far as like where I actually sold the offer itself, I know there's a couple places that I haven't dabbled in them, but I know there's like a couple of different platforms, even outside of like Kajabi, that are for smaller creators that you can tap into. Of course, my mind is like going. Gumroad is one of them. I don't know if you're familiar with that one or use that one. There's another one. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I was doing it myself. So I was selling it through my audience, lead magnet, on my email list. And then my email list was through Flowdesk. And then Flowdesk had introduced checkouts. So I just rode that wave and got grandfathered in on that and then used their own checkout page.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think like Gumroad has a Discover network, which is nice. And you can boost your offer in there by giving them more of a fee. And then for designers specifically, there's something called Creative Market, which Katie, yours maybe fit into. And even like Etsy, I see people sell this kind of stuff on Etsy.
Yes, I forgot about Creative Market. Yeah, I've bought like Canva templates and things off of there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good, what's nice about the marketplace angle is like people are looking for digital products.
Yeah, they're there for that.
Yeah, it can be a good place to discover stuff. All right, I want to map your products and where they fit into your channels, because I think this is the challenge for service providers who are selling digital products. It's like, if you're a creator and all you're selling is one digital product, then you're just going to promote it everywhere. But if you've got services, if you've got a membership, then it's like, what goes where? So
tell me what to do, Lex.
Let's map it out. We're going to do it together. Okay. So we have this template here. If you're watching this video, you can grab this template out of my newsletter and that QR code in the upper left. The last issue of the newsletter, I shared this whiteboard template so you can put it to work. Okay, so
am I allowed to do that live? Can I get the QR code?
Yes. Didn't I send you the link to this Canva template though? We're gonna.
Oh yeah, you did. That's right.
I see your face in here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna add your different offers in here, and we're gonna prioritize them by channel. Because as we looked on your site, right? Like if I go back to your homepage, your main call to action there is the Style Squad, which is the membership, right?
Yes.
So that's really interesting to me because I think a lot of people think, well, I should put my highest value offer there, right? My services, I should do a book a call to action there. So I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about how you prioritize these across your channels. Yeah. Let's load in the offers. So we've got services.
Yeah.
We've got the Style Squad membership. And then we've got these trend lookbooks that maybe will come back. And then should we put the podcast in here?
Yeah, we can do that.
Is there anything we're missing?
I don't think so. Sounds about right. Sounds like enough.
We've got some people coming on. Oh, hey. Chris is so awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Chris, for sending you. I love Chris. Okay. So we've got 4 things to promote, lots of things to promote. So the podcast isn't necessarily an offer, but it's like probably something that you're promoting quite a bit. Or the lives. Should we call it the lives?
Yeah, because I've kind of transitioned it into lives, and this could be a part of that conversation, is because it was starting to get, how do I advertise the podcast in addition to all these things? So I tried to combine the live podcasting on LinkedIn as part of that, because if I'm already on LinkedIn, I can promote the lives at the same time instead of just doing the podcast.
Is that why you decided to move away from the podcast? Because you were like, it's too much to promote. I can't promote this.
One of them, yes, that reason, and then just the lack of real interaction, right? Because I felt like there was that big disconnect. It's like I was dropping all of these things in the podcast, and I love podcasts too, and this is that, right? It's like when you're listening to something, you're like, oh yeah, and you're adding all this value. But if someone just has that one quick question, they never actually get to ask that one quick question.
Yes, exactly. This is what.
But like with the lives, we have people here right now. Like they're asking questions live. You can help. It just felt a little bit more in alignment with what my real vision is and the community and building that bridge to the community.
Okay, I love it. Building community. We always talk about this. Build your community. Okay. We've got your offers. Now we're going to put your channels in here. So we've got your website. We've got your newsletter. Mm-hmm. Verbal calls to action is like, I'm at a networking event. I'm giving a talk. Like, what are the things that you're saying out of your own mouth in places where like people are like, Katie, what do you want to promote? Okay, that's what I'm going to promote. Social media. What social media channels do you use? You use LinkedIn?
And Instagram.
Okay. Do you have affiliates and partners?
I don't. That keeps coming up, but I have not. I have loose ones, like
like informal.
yeah, informal. That's a good word.
Okay, we've got the live LinkedIn lives, which I'm putting a little separately than the LinkedIn post, but we could put them together. And then any other channels that you're using? Communities might be a channel. Are you guesting on podcasts?
Yeah, I was gonna say I do a lot of like speaking inside of other communities, and in my mind, that and/or podcasts kind of go together for me. But
yeah, we could also put that under verbal calls to action, but we'll leave it there for now. All right, so let's talk about this stack. You're on your website right now. You've got the Style Squad membership as number one call to action, right? So if we're here on the website, that's here, and it's also highlighted in the nav.
Yes.
Tell us why.
Because that was what I want to grow the most, is the Style Squad community. So it's really prioritizing that. So that for me was, this is where I want to put all of my energy. So all of my marketing forward facing is going to be that, and all of my one-on-one clients usually come from referrals of someone that I know or speaking in communities. I've had one-on-one client that just went to my website.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? This feels like the best way to use, like sitting down and being like, okay, how are the things shaking out? And then how am I going to do it?
I love it. So two things I think are smart about that thinking. One is like, what's the thing I want to grow? When you're saying it's the membership, makes total sense to prioritize the thing you want to grow. Funny enough, a lot of people don't do that. And then the second thing is like, these people who buy this thing are not coming to my website. So my people that are buying my one-on-one services, they're not originating on the website, right? They're not coming in through Google or through a cold channel. They're being referred. The website is less important in that loop.
Yes.
And those two things are really good call outs. So we've got the membership, which is like your middle offer essentially, right? Mm-hmm. Basically.
Yes.
In terms of pricing. What's the second call to action on the website? Would you say it's the services?
Yeah, probably. Definitely, because I don't talk about the trends book. I don't think it's all on there anymore. I really streamlined it in. And then it would be the podcast.
Okay.
Because I think the podcast it's tons of value, right? So when I first built my website, it was really out, because I started my podcast before I started my business. So for a long time, everything was just focused on the podcast. So then when these services and stuff kind of were just like, oh yeah, you need a website. Like that's what people do. And then when I started getting clear, I'm like, okay, I really want to drive more people into the membership because I can see where I can just help a lot more people feel really good. Then that became the main focus of the website.
Okay. I love that origin. I didn't know that you started as a podcast website.
Oh yeah. That's a different episode.
Okay. So we've got membership, number one call to action. You've done a nice job prioritizing that. Services are also available there. And I always say, like, if people want to work with you, a services nav, very clear shot, no questions asked, right? Contact services. Mm-hmm. It's obvious how to contact Katie. Your email newsletter, when you're pushing out the newsletter, give us the stack rank of promotion there.
Of promotion, I would say it's podcast or LinkedIn Live. And now this is my own growth opportunity as an entrepreneur. And my email, I'm really good at providing the value and doing the weekly newsletter and giving all the tips away and all of that, right? So I'm really good at that. Then I would say next is a Style Squad membership. Okay. That one, another one that I regularly am pretty good about updating people on, or any. So we'll take Style Squad and then any paid events, because sometimes we'll open the Style Squad up to do paid events. In my mind, that's still part of the Style Squad. That, and then last but not least, will be one-on-one services. Because like I said, my one-on-ones tend to come from referrals, and that feels like it's, or community building. And then, so all of that feels slightly different to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the role, like why promote the LinkedIn Live so much in the newsletter? Tell us about why that's number one here.
Well, that became number one because it was the flow from the podcast. So I was constantly getting people to go listen to the podcast, because when I had started the business, as a podcast first. I wanted to figure out how am I going to monetize the podcast. I enjoy podcasting, but that wasn't where I was finding that I was really good at monetizing.
Yeah,
I don't have a huge audience.
Yeah.
So I would say just right now, in the last like 2 to 3 months, I'm really starting to shift how I'm using my email newsletter of like, hey, yes, I'm going to provide you value for being here, because who wants just an email that's not providing value? We get tons of emails. And now also this is what your next step is if you're curious on taking that value and actually implementing it.
So do you think of the LinkedIn Lives then as a conversion expediter for these two things?
Well, no, I don't right now, because the switching the podcast to LinkedIn Lives is so new, and I've literally only done 2 of them. So I don't think I really have what I think that is yet.
Okay. Let's talk about the LinkedIn Lives. What are you promoting on the LinkedIn Lives?
Well, I've only done 2. So the first one was I partnered with, the first one was Style Squad, because I was partnering with the co-founder of Heartbeat, which is where I host the Style Squad, to celebrate the 1-year anniversary. So we came on, we talked about how to build a profitable community, and then of course invited people to come join the Style Squad.
Yeah.
And the second LinkedIn Live was with a one-on-one client, and it was a case study on what it was like to work. She is regular on LinkedIn and does her own live series. And I was like, hey, I'd love to just kind of like get into your brain and really kind of do what you and I are really doing. Like, let's just go live and just talk about what that process looks like so people can see behind the curtain, because I think it's really valuable to just let people in behind the scenes, because entrepreneurship is a journey.
It is a journey. Okay, so it does sound like the LinkedIn Lives are a conversion expediter, right? So it's like, meet Katie, come onto the newsletter list, or come through LinkedIn. You're on the live. Yeah. And it's like either you're a Style Squad member or you're into the one-on-one. So that makes sense. And I think thinking about the lives as a like, which direction is this live going, can really help. Like as an example, this live that we're on now is now tailored towards my podcast and newsletter. You'll see my call to action there is the newsletter, but it used to be towards my membership. And I think thinking about like, what is the priority right now? What are you trying to grow? As you said earlier, Katie, it's like, that's the thing to promote. Mm-hmm. And one of the mistakes I see creators make, who like, especially folks like you, who came from like being a content creator into entrepreneurship, is they give a lot of free value away. Yeah. They don't think like, what's the monetization? Like, in what way is this content providing value back to me? And it doesn't always have to be transactional. It can be an audience growth play, right? Like the newsletter play that I'm making here is an audience growth play. It can be that too. But I think as you mentioned, Katie, it's like, I have found too that it's very hard to grow a content business these days. Like there's so much going on the internet. Like it is just faster to grow a business off of recurring revenue, like a membership and one-on-one services.
No, thank you for calling that out. That helps me see myself in the business different. As I podcasted for well over a year while I was still in corporate. It wasn't really, the intention wasn't necessarily to start a business. The intention was to figure out what was going on. And I started it before the pandemic. So it was this weird timing. So you have 2019 of podcasting, then 2020 hits, I'm still podcasting, and then I lost my job. So now I have this podcast rolling, right, that I have all these people, that I'm talking to regularly. And I think that's why my business kind of hit the ground running. Like, has it stalled out? Have I had to figure it out? Of course I have. But it hit the ground running because people were almost just waiting for me to tell them how we can work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what to do. And then I had to remember, like, what am I monetizing? I don't even know.
Yeah. It's interesting because podcasts have become like there is an opportunity to use podcasts as a conversion expediter and not make them about being a creator. So you don't necessarily have to do like sponsorships or digital products off of a podcast. Mm-hmm. You can instead use it as a way to be like, this is what it's like to work with me.
Yeah.
And Jess Milanis, who is a podcast producer and one of the growth trackers, has really shown me that in different episode formats. So the way that you're doing your LinkedIn lives really mimics that. I think that's really cool. And it's interesting. Let me see if I can expand this for everybody. But like, I really think it's interesting to see how you're ranking these according to your channels, because it's not the same stack across the board, right? Like, as you mentioned, the website is getting a different treatment than the newsletter is, right?
Yes.
And it's because you have a different level of trust with that audience. You have a different mindset maybe going into those channels. Like the newsletter is more of a stay in touch. It's like a lot of people that already know you, they subscribe to the newsletter. The website might be fresher people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like my newsletter, and tell me, I'm curious, my open rate is, I think, really high. Like most of the time it's over 50%. And everyone keeps saying that's really high. But I wonder if that's because I'm approaching it kind of with that content creator mentality.
Yeah. And it's not just like, buy my stuff.
I mean, I'm hardly ever doing that. So people are like, oh, this one is one I know I can just open and get value out of.
Yeah, I was thinking of this morning because I was going through my newsletter folder, and there's a lot of people that are still using what I would call like 2020 Instagram pandemic sales language. Like, you're not going to want to miss out. Don't miss this sale. You're going to need my Instagram InstaFunnel tomorrow, right? And it's like, I just like, are people still buying that stuff is a question I have. And I think you, as someone who like started as more of a creator, came into this with a perspective on your work before you even came up with the monetization vehicle, it's way more interesting to pay attention to, right? Like, I want to be on that newsletter whether or not I think I might hire you, which I think is a power place to be in, versus, you know, just having a newsletter that's like constantly just promoting your stuff. It's like that's not really interesting anymore.
Yeah, it's not. And that, I never plan on getting rid of that part of my newsletter. I do plan on growing and scaling my business, right? So I have to figure out the monetization piece of it, but I will forever. And another thing I've done with the podcast, so we're doing the LinkedIn lives, and then I've also started doing weekly, like a mini versions of like weekly video newsletters. So like,
I forgot about, tell us about your video newsletter, because I think this is so cool.
So then every Wednesday I'm going in and I'm just like breaking down. And I think this is also why I stopped podcasting too, like the verbal audio podcasting in the traditional sense, is I'm going in and I'm breaking down visually different aspects of styling. So like if someone, because you know, you start to hear some of the same things over and people are struggling with the same things. It's like, hey, you want to transition from skinny jeans to non-skinny jeans and you're just not sure what that looks like breaking that down. I know these are real things.
Yeah. Like my closet is full of skinny jeans. I'm with you.
And we all are going through this, right? And yeah, there's a whole mindset piece to it too that I love. And I could absolutely do videos around that. But the one thing that felt like it was kind of missing from the podcast was like, I couldn't visually show people like, hey, this is your body shape. Let me show you, like, here's a quick trick. And I'm trying to keep them really short and just like fast hitting. Like, hey, every Wednesday, you're just going to get this little tip. I'm a little long-winded. It's why I like podcasting. So that's new. So the whole like taking the podcast on the road, I wasn't really sure what that looked like. I just knew it had to look different. So I knew like I wanted that video component. So you had like the lives and then, okay, here's this weekly newsletter. I want to continue that. And I want to work in also like, okay, now here's what I do have coming up. And this is how you can get into the membership. And this is how you can come to these events or then work up to 101.
Yes. I think that's really smart. I made this list the other day for the growth trackers that was like 4 questions. And the premise was like, what does it take for someone to want to buy something or work with you? And it's like reading something you wrote, right? Like reading your thinking on something. Hearing me talk is a big one, right? Mm-hmm. Watching me in action is another one. Like we have a photographer in Growth Trackers, and he's really focused on people seeing that process behind the scenes. And that's really been impactful for him. And so I love that. You're recognizing that like when people see you in action and hear you talk, that's like a conversion driver for you, and that you don't have to necessarily say, buy my stuff, but you showing the styling is exemplifying your service, right?
Yeah, just like you're doing here with this whiteboard. I mean, everyone's probably freaking out right now like me. I'm like, oh my God. This, you know?
People really love this template. And if you're just tuning in, if you get on the newsletter in the upper left of your screen, this template is linked in the last issue of the newsletter because it was a fan favorite. Okay,
It's
let's do one more channel, Katie, and then we'll wrap it up. So I'm curious about your like speaking in communities. When you go to speak in communities, give us the offer stack there. What's the call to action that you're sharing with them?
So when I go to speak in communities, it really kind of depends on what is going on. So I just spoke in community, well, a couple this week, and I have an event coming up in March. So I'm like, let's get on that event wait list if you want to come to this event. And I usually try to make it something super specific that's going on. So either it's like that one's an open event, open to the public, or if that's not something, I host 2 big ones twice a year. If I'm not hosting that, then I usually go for something smaller like the Style Squad, or listen to the podcast, or get on the email. I don't usually pitch my one-on-ones when I speak in communities. However, that has been a huge driver of my one-on-ones because, again, when I go into someone's community, it's usually someone that I have a really good relationship with already. So there's always that little bit of like, hey, this is someone that I know and trust. And then in small audience communities, I think that works really well because they're like, oh, I love Lex, and Lex invited Katie, so she must be okay. And it's just like our friend group psychology, right? Like if we have a mutual friend, then I have to assume that you're pretty cool because we both like this one person. That's really cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as long as it's clear what you do and who it's for, that's true. Like, I don't think you need to pitch your services that hard as long as people know that you offer services.
Yeah.
So I like this idea of like making an invitation to the next step, which is like this one-off event or the membership or the newsletter. Those are good, like maybe slightly softer, lighter weight calls to action for people.
They are. Yeah.
So you can get more folks in your orbit, which we love. Because as we talked about earlier in this live, if people are motivated, they're ready to work with you, they're going to do it. They're going to go to the site. They're going to click services. They're going to reach out. As long as you don't make that path hard.
Yeah. And that's been my experience is like, either it's a 6-month like lead up to you trying to figure out if this is something you want to do, or it's been like, okay, I just met you today and I'm ready to go.
Yes.
That's my experience as a small audience. It's like, there's no in between for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. Okay, Katie, on that note, tell the audience about this event.
So March 18th through 22nd, I'm hosting a Step Up Your Style game event. So all my creative female entrepreneurs, if you're looking for how to connect your style to your brand identity, so that people know exactly what you do, who you are, and what you stand for, we'll be breaking that down over 5 days, making it super simple and clear on everything from getting clear on how to take your brand and mimic it in your style personality, which you're probably already doing. So it's really just a little bit of validating colors, the actual wardrobe styling, clothing psychology, and that kind of fun stuff. It will work in some on-camera confidence.
Love it. On-camera confidence, you know we need it. Get that QR code. That's Katie's event. You can join her and the Style Squad over there. Katie, thank you for coming on the show and walking us through how you're thinking about this. Excited to see the lookbooks come back into the orbit here.
I'm excited about that too. Thanks for doing this. This was really fun to just like do it live and let people see and just kind of explore it. I appreciate it. I love the way that your mind works, Lex. I think I say that every time I talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, if anybody's interested, you can grab that QR code on the screen. Head over to Katie's event, and also you can get the template that we worked through on my newsletter. It's the last issue. All month and probably into March, I'm exploring how to sell digital products, sort of how they fit into the offer stack of all the things you're promoting. And it's all about this one digital product that I am selling called the Rev Your Referral System, which you can also check out. This is a Notion template that I developed in January. And I'm trying to figure out, how does this fit into my offer stack? Where can this thing be promoted? How does it make sense for people who sell more than one digital product, who sell services, who sell memberships, to prioritize these things? Where should they fit in? So check that out and stay tuned on the newsletter for more on digital products. If you're selling digital products, I would love to hear from you, whether they're working or not. What's your experience been? You can hit me up on the newsletter, just hit reply, or you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'll be back in a couple more weeks with another live stream. So stay tuned for that. And I'll send you off to your weekend, y'all.